Hello beautiful bookish people, my name is Hannah, and little known fun fact about me is I've read every Shakespeare play.
Yep, that's me.
Because, yes, I am that English major and a little pretentious. Because back in high school, I wanted to brag that back in high school I read every Shakespeare play. Don't worry, I've grown from then. But yeah, so what a perfect way to start the tier ranking list. I don't think I've seen anyone do this, but we're going to be ranking all of Shakespeare's plays. Alrighty, I guess let's go ahead and get started with one that I guess is not that well known. Pericles is not one of my favorite, I'm gonna be honest. I remember it being boring, long, and sexist, if I remember correctly. It's one of the Shakespeare plays I would not recommend to someone who's just trying to get into Shakespeare. But we're gonna put her in the category of we don't talk about her, because like all Shakespeare plays are good plays, but there's definitely better ones. Speaking of, Coriolanus is actually one of those plays. I think it is one of those underrated Shakespeare tragedies that nobody talks about. But if you want to sound pretentious like me and somebody's talking about political theory, you can whip out this Shakespeare play because it can be applied to any presidential candidate. So for that, you know what? We're gonna put that one in God is a Woman. Cue the Ariana Grande song, but that is possibly one of the most underrated Shakespeare plays, and it needs more credit because it's great. The Merry Wives of Windsor is not one of my favorites. It's the closest that Shakespeare will come to Jane Austen in like a comedy of manners sort of way. And you know what? It kind of falls flat. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's okay, but like read Oscar Wilde for a comedy of manners, not Shakespeare. So we're gonna put her in we don't talk about her. Whoa, moving into the Merchant of Venice. The Merchant of Venice, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember a whole lot about. And it's sad because it's very famous. But you know, we're gonna put it in the 3-star space because I don't particularly remember anything except for the women in that play because Portia dresses up like a lawyer, and you know what? We love to see it. Alright, Comedy of Errors is okay. It's one of Shakespeare's early comedies. It's about 2 sets of twins and miscommunication and all that stuff. It's a light-hearted comedy, not really too much to it. I think there's more complex comedies that he writes later on. Would I recommend it? Fine, we'll put it in the 3 stars. There's nothing particularly wrong about it. It's just there are other things that are better, you know? Richard II, gosh dang. This is basically a play that you get to watch somebody go insane for 5 acts. But I'm gonna put it in we don't talk about her because I think the other Richard is better. And also, his history plays are not fun to me. You know what I mean? Like, Shakespeare invented the history genre, and we have to credit him for that, but that's about it. They're his least compelling plays, in my opinion. Speaking of that, we're gonna put Measure for Measure in Dumpster Fire. I hate Measure for Measure so much. It's a romantic comedy built around saving someone who's under capital punishment. I don't know, there's something about it that I just can't get behind, and it's weak, and we would not be talking about this play if it wasn't written by Shakespeare. It's like it approaches this topic matter in such a light way that I can't get behind it. It's aimless, and I don't know, I just don't like it. It's not done well. But going from a very unknown play to one of the most famous plays from Shakespeare's generation to our generations to come is Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet, in my opinion, is a satire. If we're looking at it under the lens of satire, it's God is a Woman. Cue the Ariana Grande. It's amazing because then it gets to analyze teen angst and the downfall of loving someone without actually knowing who they are. And if this is like the peak Shakespeare, poetry, and it came out during a time where Shakespeare didn't like Christopher Marlowe's play, and I think it's supposed to be a response to um, Queen of Carthage. Yes. Think things through. Check out your boyfriend. Make sure he's not a serial killer. Romeo wasn't a serial killer, but you know what I mean. Alrighty. Much Ado About Nothing is a great comedy. It's filled with some of the best, like, Shakespeare couples of all time. The banter between, like, Beatrice and Benedict is unmatched, quite frankly. I do have some problems with it towards the end with its depiction of, like, this woman. It's not like Romeo and Juliet, where it's supposed to analyze a tragedy. This is a comedy. It's very lighthearted, and yet a girl is faking her death to make sure her love interest cares about her. But that being said, it's one of Shakespeare's best comedies, so we're gonna put it in Chef's Kiss. It's not God is a Woman. It's not Ariana Grande. That's for sure. But it is very solid, and I understand why people love it. It's just not particularly my favorite. But that being said, it looks like we're on to the Henrys. And I'm going to be frank, we're going to put all of these Henrys in We Don't Talk About Her. Where's the other Henrys? The only one we are giving rights to is Henry Part 1. Only because I love an origin story. Anthony and Cleopatra has such a weird structure to me. It just, like, doesn't flow. And also, like, Cleopatra is very annoying. Like, she's very bratty, she's very privileged, and I think that's done on purpose, because if it's done on purpose, then, like, Act 4, Act 5, Cleopatra is amazing. And only because of that, I think it's on purpose. We're giving it a 3-star. I wouldn't recommend it, but going from a subpar fantasy to possibly one of the greatest tragedies of all time, Hamlet, and without a doubt, that is God is a Woman. Ariana Grande getting cute. I mean, from the angst, from the very interesting portrays of women, like the daddy issues mixed with ghosts, set in Denmark. You could take this play to a desert island and analyze it forever, and that makes my English brain, it's fine, very happy. I love Hamlet. Hamlet is the one Shakespeare play I would save if all of these were on fire. I know. So, speaking of Shakespeare's, like, best tragedy, let's talk about his best comedy, which is As You Like It. Cue the Ariana Grande again, shall we? Wow, God is a Woman. As You Like It is the perfect comedy. Every line, every sentence is perfect. Its characters are fleshed out and interesting, and it speaks so perfectly to Shakespeare's favorite topic, which is analyzing humanity. And this one is done so incredibly well. But Julius Caesar, I have got to be honest, I've only read Julius Caesar for school, and it has not been my favorite. I understand you can analyze it up the wazoo, and I understand it does need a reread, but for that, and for my own personal gain, this is my tier list. Remember, it's getting a 3-star. Moving on to Troilus and Cressida. Oh my gosh, I forgot about this play, but this one is so good. This is, like, taking that same, like, Greek era of, like, Julius Caesar, and then making Ulysses a very fleshed out character. Like, Ulysses is probably Shakespeare's best character. Structure wise, it is not my favorite. For that reason, it is getting a chef's kiss, but it still would highly recommend, and it's underrated. Speaking of underrated, look at all these transitions. Love Labor's Lost is Shakespeare's best poetry. If you love Romeo and Juliet, you will love Love Labor's Lost. It is peak Shakespeare rhythm, rhyme, and just love ballad upon love ballad. It is beautiful. It's very light. It's underrated, and honestly, I think the thing that gets held up for people is you get bogged down by the pretty words, but I love me some poetry, so that's getting a chef's kiss for me. So, oh gosh. Titus Andromachus is dumpster fire. It's going straight in the trash. This is Shakespeare's first work, and you can tell. It's a gore fest. It's killing people without having meaning behind it. It's like cutting out people's and girls' tongues for no apparent reason. It has no sense, but it does have the first Yo Mama joke. Am I putting it in We Don't Talk About Her just for the first Yo Mama joke? Absolutely not. It's dumpster fire. I would never recommend it. Just thinking about it is getting me angry. Let's not think about it anymore and talk about Macbeth. Macbeth is arguably the second best Shakespeare tragedy. I know a lot of people love Macbeth. Lady Macbeth is absolutely one of the most fascinating Shakespeare protagonists ever. That being said, it's not my favorite, so it's getting a chef's kiss. Let's keep going with Othello. Now, Othello is definitely someone that I need to reread, and I think I would have a more solid understanding of it. But on that reason, I have to give it a 3 stars because I acknowledge it's probably one of the better Shakespeare tragedies. I just can't tell you why. King Lear is straight up dumpster fire. You can fight me on this, but I will go down on record and tell you that King Lear is possibly one of Shakespeare's worst plays. Actually, you know what? It is one of Shakespeare's worst plays. It villainizes the women, and you know what? They should have been the protagonists of those plays all along. You know why? Because King Lear was going insane, and when a woman was trying to acknowledge her power, what did she get? Villainized. Thanks, Shakespeare. King Lear is filled with like kind of toxic masculinity, white men in power going insane, and the women getting villainized. We don't have it, we don't like it. That is the tea on King Lear, and honestly, I can make a whole video about it. That looks like Henry VIII. And we're going to put her in We Don't Talk About Her because it's a lazy play and Shakespeare was pandering to Queen Elizabeth. But if you want to read a good history, read Henry V because, oof, that is a chef's kiss. That is possibly Shakespeare's best history. It's filled with rousing speeches, lines you probably heard of, like a bond of brotherhood, cool, like interesting depictions of war. The only thing why it's not in the Ariana Grande space is because of the last act. I always find it to be such a weird place, and I never believed that Catherine would actually like Henry because he's not a good dude to her. But speaking of like interesting dudes in Shakespeare, that was not a good transition. 12th Night, hands down, Ariana Grande. God is a woman in 12th Night. The gender discussions, the gender fluidity, the messages about female protagonists in a Shakespeare Elizabethan society are just immaculate. Also, this is another one where Shakespeare wrote this one for Queen Elizabeth, but it's done much better. The wit, the charm, the like subversion of like a very typical Shakespeare masculine man with the Duke Orsino. Orsino is really interesting because he's a melancholic man, and it's analyzing that and putting like the woman in the center of attention and the pursuer. Ugh, I could go on and on. I don't know who this is. I hope I don't sound ridiculous, but I don't know who this man is. Let's actually really quickly look up the Shakespeare plays. Okay, it's Edward. Edward, again, like most histories, is going in the We Don't Talk About Her. I'm not a fan. It's boring, it's long, it's repetitive. Shakespeare could do better. But speaking of a better history, this looks like it could be Richard III. Yeah, he looks like he could have a hunchback. Richard III is like if a Bond villain got his own play. He's so cynical, so evil. You watch him ruin every aspect of his life. He's whispering this one's ear, he's whispering in another one's ear, and there's like some sort of pleasure that you just are able to watch him destroy everyone and manipulate someone, and you're like, dang, that's valid. 3 stars. Midsummer Night's Dream used to be my favorite Shakespeare play, and so it feels sad to not put it in God is a Woman, but I think I'm going to have to put it in Chef's Kiss. Now, Midsummer Night's Dream, I will admit, is the perfect Shakespeare play if you want to get started with Shakespeare. It's very clear-cut, it's straight to the point, I don't think it's that confusing, also filled with some of the most iconic Shakespeare lines. But yeah, it makes me kind of sad, because now that I'm looking at the other ones, it's not as good. Dang. But alright, we're almost getting to the end, and like, again, this is one of the worst Shakespeare plays. It's going in straight dumpster fire. The Two Gentlemen of Verona is one of Shakespeare's, again, earlier works, and you can tell it meanders, it doesn't go anywhere. Also, I'm pretty sure it's sexist. Moving on to Timon of Athens is actually one of like the lesser known tragedies. I think you can tell that Shakespeare was like depressed when he wrote this one because nobody comes out unharmed. And like you definitely have to be in the right mood for this one, but I'm gonna put it in 3 stars. It's like kind of valid. Sublime is very cliche. Nobody talks about it, probably for good reason. You know what I mean? Would I recommend it? Yes, because it's Shakespeare. But am I being real? Yeah, we don't talk about her. The Tempest. My gut instinct wants to put it in God is a Woman because for the longest time, The Tempest was my favorite Shakespeare play. But upon reanalyzing it, there are definitely some problematic elements to it with the treatment of Caliban, possibly one or two of the only people of color in Shakespeare's whole, like, why did I want to say discography? In Shakespeare's entire discography, and it has such a beautiful monologue at the end that says goodbye to the stage, and for that reason I want to put it in God is a Woman. My high school self would be so sad if I didn't. Okay, cue the Ariana Grande, God is a Woman. You know what? I kind of want to end with Taming of the Shrew, so we're gonna say Winter's Tale first. This one is boring. And so now we're moving on to Taming of the Shrew, which I think we can all collectively agree is dumpster fire. A lot of critics like to say that Taming of the Shrew is fine because it shows how women manipulate men. But I'm also like, where? It's just about this dude and then training her to be the good wife that she was always supposed to be from within by basically torturing her. He doesn't feed her. He doesn't let her sleep. He like threatens not to allow her to go to her sister's party. Like all this stuff is just manipulation and gaslighting, and I don't like it. We don't like to see it. That is the tea on Taming of the Shrew. So yeah, that is the end of this video. I don't know. This felt like the only tier list I had like very like strong opinions about, but I'm very excited to spread that Shakespeare love. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Keep reading and all that jazz.